The vineyard sprawled under a golden haze. The kind that only early summer in Napa Valley could conjure. Rows of grapevines stretched toward the horizon, where the Pacific shimmered faintly, teasing the edge of the world. Guests in crisp linen dresses and pastel polos sipped champagne, their laughter weaving through soft jazz notes floating from hidden speakers. This was supposed to be Ava Thompson's engagement party. But to her, it felt more like a stage where she was cast as an ornament, beautiful, polished, and utterly overlooked. Ava stood at the center of it all, her sage green dress catching the light, her auburn hair cascading in soft waves, her smile pinned like a corsage she didn't choose. At 28, she carried herself with the quiet grace of someone who'd learned to navigate a family that rarely saw her. Beside her, her fiancé, Lucas Bennett, 30, flashed his easy charm, chatting with Ethan Caldwell, her cousin, who had a knack for stealing the spotlight without trying. Her father, Richard Thompson, introduced her to the Hawthorns from the wine board. "This is our daughter," he said, his voice clipped, as if her name, Ava, held no weight. Her mother, Claire, glided past, fussing over place cards, ensuring every fork gleamed at the perfect angle. Her glance at Ava was fleeting. A checklist tick, not a mother's warmth. Lucas leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "You're stealing the show tonight, babe." Ava nodded, but her eyes flicked to Ethan, lounging in the chair she'd chosen for herself, his wineglass raised as if he owned the evening. Last week, she'd overheard her parents in the den, murmuring about a coastal property. She'd assumed it was a vacation plan, maybe an investment. She didn't ask. Ava had long ago mastered reading the silences in her family, the middle child in spirit if not by birth. The clinking of silver on glass cut through the hum. Guests turned, expectant. Ava's grandfather, Henry Caldwell, rose from his seat. At 82, he still carried the gravitas of a retired Navy captain. His navy blazer crisp, a faded service pin glinting under the patio lights. Henry wasn't just a guest, he was the family's anchor. His words a rare currency everyone respected. He raised his glass, his eyes locking on Ava and Lucas. "To Ava and Lucas," he began, his voice steady as stone. "May your love be kind, your bond unbreakable, and your home as steady as the beachside estate I gifted you 3 months ago." The air froze, the breeze stilled, glasses paused mid-sip. Ava's heart stuttered. She stared at Henry, her lips parting. "What estate?" she asked, her voice soft, not accusing, just lost. Henry chuckled, scanning the crowd, expecting a jest. "Come now, sweetheart, don't tell me you haven't settled in yet." His tone was light, but his eyes sharpened as they landed on Richard, Ava's father. "Richard, tell me this isn't what I think it is." Silence. Claire coughed into her napkin. Richard shifted, his jaw tight. Ethan's lips curled into a smile, a smug, knowing one that made Ava's skin prickle. An estate? A beachside mansion? She'd never heard a word about it. The guests stirred, whispers rustling like leaves. Someone muttered, "Maybe she knew." Another hissed, "No way, look at her face." Henry's chuckle faded, his face hardening. "It's the one in Monterey," he said, louder now. "I signed it over in February." "Ava, your wedding gift. Did no one tell you?" The question hung like a guillotine. No one answered. Henry's gaze lingered on Richard. Then Claire. Then Ethan. Disappointment carved lines deeper into his face. Without another word, he turned and walked off. His steps measured, not dramatic, but heavy with finality. The party didn't end, but it fractured. Laughter turned brittle. Smiles tightened into masks. Lucas squeezed Ava's hand under the table, his palm clammy. "Maybe it's just a mix-up," he whispered. "Don't," Ava said, pulling away. Something inside her cracked, not anger, but something colder, hollower, like realizing the life she believed in was a script written for someone else. She slipped away from the tables, past the glowing lanterns and jazz notes. Unnoticed. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky darker, as if a curtain had fallen. Ava walked to the pergola by the olive trees, the one Claire had once called too rustic for photos. She sank onto the bench, her mind replaying fragments. Claire's offhand comment last month about avoiding Monterey's south side. It's under construction. She'd said. Ethan's new Rolex. Glinting at family dinners. The way her parents changed the subject whenever she entered the room. It wasn't anger yet, but betrayal, quiet and sharp, like a blade she hadn't seen coming. Her phone buzzed. A text from Henry. Meet me tomorrow. They've taken more than just the house. Ava stared at the words, her hand resting on her knee, the engagement ring catching the pergola's dim light. She didn't sleep that night. She lay atop the comforter, still in her dress, watching moonlight crawl across the ceiling as the fan spun lazily above. By dawn, the sky was a cold blue, and Ava was already on the road. The GPS led her through winding canyons, past wild sage and rust-red cliffs, to Ocean View Drive in Monterey, a name that screamed real estate brochures and broken promises. The road narrowed, lined with whispering palms, the air thick with salt. At the cul-de-sac's end stood the estate, white stucco walls glowing in the sun. Blue-tiled roof reflecting the sky. An iron gate curling like vines. A stone path wound toward the beach, framed by bougainvillea, jasmine, and lilacs. Lilacs Ava had once, at 15, said she'd grow over a seaside pergola. Claire had nodded absently then, asking Ava's sister, Lily, if she wanted more iced tea. Ava rolled down her window. A security guard approached, clipboard in hand, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Name? He asked. Thompson, Ava replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. He scanned the list. Here to see Mr. Ethan Caldwell? Ava's fingers tightened on the wheel. But she didn't answer. He pressed a button, and the gate creaked open. The driveway curved upward, gravel crunching under her tires. She parked in the roundabout. Stepped out, her sandals hitting the stone like she'd walked this path before. The salt air mixed with lilac. Too familiar, too much. Inside, the double doors were open. A woman greeted her, tall, sleek ponytail, linen pressed like a second skin. You must be Ava, she said, her smile polished, practiced. I'm Natalie, Ethan's wife. Her voice carried the warmth of a country club hostess. I didn't know he was expecting company. Ava nodded, stepping into the foyer. Vaulted ceilings soared above, sunlight streaming through arched windows. The air faintly lavender and fresh paint. The floors gleamed, the furniture modern but sterile, like a staged home waiting for buyers. In the kitchen, a stack of unopened mail sat on the marble counter. A pale blue envelope caught Ava's eye. Her name, Ava Thompson, scrawled in Aunt Margaret's handwriting. The stamp untouched. She didn't reach for it. Just stared. Natalie followed her gaze. Oh, something got mixed in, she said lightly. Ethan hasn't sorted it yet. Before Ava could respond, Ethan's voice echoed down the hall. Casual, carefree. He strolled in, silk shirt half-buttoned, iced coffee in hand, like he was hosting brunch. Well, he said, grinning. Didn't expect you here, Ava. The nickname stung. He hadn't called her that since they were kids. What brings you? Ava met his eyes, unflinching. Why's your name on the deed? Ethan blinked, then smiled wider, unbothered. Oh, Grandpa told you. He sipped his coffee, leaning against the counter. You think they'd ever let you have that kind of control? Come on, Ava, you're smart, but you're not the golden child. Never were. The words landed like a slap. Casual but cutting. The room felt colder. Despite the sunlight, Ava didn't flinch, but her eyes caught something. A yellow folder peeking from under Ethan's briefcase. Labeled Monterey title transfer. Dated April 12th, 2 days after Henry's gift. She didn't reach for it. Just burned the image into her mind. Her hand slipped into her bag. Her phone camera clicking once. Soft under Ethan's next sentence. You really thought it was yours? He chuckled. Ava turned toward the door. Natalie was already on her phone, pretending not to notice. The envelope with Ava's name sat untouched. Ava didn't say goodbye. Outside, the sun hit her face. The air thick with salt and memory. The gate closed behind her. And she drove away, the weight of Ethan's words sinking deeper with every mile. That night, sleep didn't come. Ava sat in her car outside her condo. the heat inside stifling, her hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering her. She called in sick to work the next morning. Her voice flat, personal. By noon, she was downtown at the Monterey County Recorder's office. A tired building with sun-bleached cement and flickering fluorescents. A clerk, M. Gutierrez, her gray hair in a low bun, handed Ava a slip of paper with a number. "Third floor, window 4, she said, her voice warm, like a grandmother who'd seen too many family fights. "At window 4, Ava explained. "I'm looking for deed records. Monterey property. Thompson family." Gutierrez nodded, leading her to a cabinet labeled Private Residential, 2020 present. She unlocked it, pulled a thick file, and handed it to Ava. "Take your time," she said, pointing to a copy room. Ava sat, opening the file. The top document was a grant deed, dated April 10, signed by Henry, naming Ava Thompson as the recipient. But 2 pages later, another deed, dated April 12, replaced her name with Ethan's. The signature looked off, too smooth, like a practiced forgery. At the bottom of the original, a handwritten clause in Henry's scrawl. "Gift is irrevocable. To remain in Ava Thompson's name for full ownership within 90 days. The ink had bled slightly. Real and raw. Ava made copies, scanned the clause, sent it to 2 backup drives and an old email she hadn't used in years. She thanked Gutierrez, who studied her face. "Find what you needed?" Ava nodded. "More than I thought I would." Back at her condo, the golden hour bathed Los Angeles in a glow that felt hollow. She opened her laptop, scrolling through old emails from Claire. "Maybe a downtown apartment suits you better. You wouldn't know what to do with that much space. Don't be dramatic, Ava. You've never liked the ocean." The words stung, each one a reminder of years spent being taught not to expect. Not to ask, not to belong. She texted Henry a photo of the clause. With one line. "Did you know they forged your signature?" No reply came that night. Or the next. Ava waited, sorting emails, folding laundry, watering a dying plant. Anything to keep her hands busy while the fire inside her grew. Quiet but steady. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a fight she hadn't chosen but wouldn't lose. The conference room in Century City was a cold, gray cage of glass and steel. Its oval table gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. Ava Thompson, now 28, sat rigid in a navy blazer. Her auburn hair tied back with a black satin ribbon, a talisman for steadiness she'd clung to since she was a teenager. The air conditioning hummed too loudly. Or maybe it was just her nerves, amplifying every sound. Across the table, her cousin Ethan Caldwell, 32, lounged with a loose tie and a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Beside him, his attorney, a man in a pastel tie who twirled his pen like a nervous tick. Shuffled papers. Ava's mother, Claire, sat stiffly, her arms crossed, her face a mask of disapproval that never once met Ava's gaze. The absence of her grandfather, Henry Caldwell, was a quiet ache in Ava's chest. She'd called him twice that week, left voicemails, but heard nothing back. At 82, was it age or choice keeping him away? She wasn't sure. James Langston, Ava's lawyer, sat beside her, his silver hair catching the light, his calm presence a lifeline in the sterile room. At 72, Langston carried the weight of decades in courtrooms. His hands steady, his eyes unreadable. 3 arbitrators sat at the head of the table, their suits as neutral as their expressions. The lead arbitrator, a woman with sharp cheekbones and a voice like polished stone, opened the session. "We'll review evidence, hear statements, and maintain decorum," she said, her gaze sweeping the room. Then she nodded at Ethan. "You may begin." Ethan stood, straightening his tie with a theatrical flourish. "Thank you," he said, his voice smooth, practiced, like he was addressing a boardroom instead of a family torn apart. "This isn't easy, but when someone threatens a family's legacy with erratic behavior, someone has to step up." He paused, letting the words sink in, his eyes flicking to Ava. "I've watched my cousin spiral, irrational decisions, baseless accusations, conspiracy theories against her own blood." He held up a folder, his smirk widening. These are messages Ava sent me and others. I'd like to submit them as evidence. The arbitrator nodded. Ethan's attorney distributed copies, printed screenshots that landed in front of Ava like a slap. She glanced down. Her name, her avatar, but the words were wrong, sharp. Cruel, not hers. I'll sell that house just to watch it burn. Henry's too old to stop me. Another. I never cared about family. I just want what's mine. They can rot. Gasps rippled through the room. Claire's lips tightened, her eyes fixed on the papers as if they confirmed every whispered doubt she'd ever had about her daughter. The arbitrator's voice cut through. Ms. Thompson, would you like to respond? Ava's throat tightened. Those aren't mine, she said, quieter than she meant. I never wrote them. Ethan's smile didn't falter. I have metadata, timestamps, everything, he said, his tone almost pitying. Langston rose, his voice calm but firm. We'd like to reserve our rebuttal for later. The arbitrator nodded, and the session droned on. Procedures. Legal posturing. Chain of custody. Ava barely heard it, her mind stuck on the fake messages. The way Claire believed them without question. The way Ethan had come prepared. Armed with lies. Just before the break, the door creaked open. Every head turned. Henry Caldwell stood in the doorway, his cane steady in one hand, a small black flash drive in the other. At 82, he looked frailer than Ava remembered, but his eyes burned with the same fire that had guided her through childhood compass lessons. He didn't look at Ethan or Claire, only at Ava. She stood, her breath catching. Henry handed the drive to Langston without a word, then sat beside her, his presence a quiet thunder. Let's stop pretending, he said, his voice low but sharp enough to slice the room's tension. I may be old, but I'm not blind. I hear things. Bragging over drinks. Careless words in law offices. He looked at Ethan. You think no one notices the mess you leave? The room stilled, the air humming with anticipation. Langston plugged the drive into his laptop, angled it toward the arbitrators, and hit play. Ethan's voice filled a space. Cocky and unguarded. All I did was swap a file. And boom, she's crying in her little condo. Easiest 3,812 con I ever pulled. A second clip. Ava's soft. Always was. Scare her a little. She folds. The arbitrators' faces hardened. Claire's hands clenched. Ethan paled, his attorney whispering frantically. Langston played more. Real messages from Ava to Henry. Are you sure you're okay signing this? I just want you to be comfortable. I love you. You're the only one who's ever seen me. Ava's throat tightened, but she held steady. The lead arbitrator leaned forward. We'll reconvene tomorrow for final statements. But truth has a way of surfacing. Her words weren't directed at anyone, but Ava felt them, a shift in the room's gravity. She wasn't the one on trial anymore. The next day, the same gray room felt different, lighter. As if the air itself had exhaled. Ethan sat with a loosened tie, his eyes shadowed, avoiding Ava's gaze. Claire was absent, her absence louder than her presence had been. The arbitrators filed in, and the lead spoke, her voice final. After reviewing all evidence, including digital forensics and witness testimony, we find the living trust dated March 14 valid and binding. Subsequent documents are inadmissible due to tampering. All property rights to the Monterey residence revert to Ava Thompson. Effective immediately. Ava's breath caught, not in triumph, but in relief. Quiet and raw. Ethan muttered something, his voice sharp. This was rigged. She manipulated him. Ava stood before Langston could stop her. No, she said, her voice clear now. I protected what was mine. You stole and called it family. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Ava didn't wait for more. She walked out, Langston's hand brushing her shoulder as he caught up. You handled that well, he said. I didn't do it for applause. She replied. He smiled faintly. I know. Outside, the courthouse plaza glittered under the California sun, the breeze carrying salt and a hint of cologne. Henry's cane tapped behind her. Slower than usual, he joined her, his back straighter than it had been in months. You fought well, he said, his voice soft but proud. I always hoped it'd be you. Ava's throat clenched. She wanted to say thank you. I'm sorry, I never wanted this to hurt you. but all she managed was a nod. We should get lunch, Henry said, chuckling. That diner on Jefferson still make that awful roast beef sandwich I like? Ava smiled. I'll make sure they save you one. They walked toward the valet, Henry leaning on her arm. He stumbled slightly on the curb, and Ava caught him. Just a moment, he murmured, waving it off. These legs are older than you think. But then his fingers twitched in hers. His weight sagging. Grandpa, Ava said, her voice sharp. He collapsed, his cane clattering to the pavement. Call an ambulance, she shouted. Dropping beside him, a woman screamed. A man dialed 911. Langston knelt, already on his phone. Ava gripped Henry's hand, his face pale, lips tinged blue. Stay with me, she whispered. Please. His eyes found hers, his voice a rasp. Make it yours. Make it right. Then, nothing. Sirens wailed, red lights flashing across the plaza. EMTs moved fast, oxygen. Compressions. Words Ava couldn't process. She stood back, powerless, as they loaded Henry onto a gurney. Langston's hand rested on her shoulder. But she barely felt it. The man who'd given her back her life was slipping away. And no victory could balance that loss. A week later, the cemetery was cloaked in gray morning mist. Langston's truck crunched gravel at 9:58 a.m. Only a handful attended. 2 of Henry's Navy buddies, their faded pins gleaming, and a neighbor clutching a casserole dish. No Ethan, no Claire. Taps echoed, sharp and mournful, cutting through the stillness. Ava held the folded flag, its weight heavier than it should have been. Langston murmured, I wish it didn't have to be this way. Ava didn't reply. Wishing changed nothing. She drove to the Monterey estate alone. Rain pattering on her windshield. The house was silent, hollow without Henry's presence. Ava left her shoes by the door, as he'd always asked, and wandered through the rooms. His blanket draped the couch, the one she'd stolen on cold mornings. His mug sat on the drying rack, navy blue, chipped at the rim. Upstairs, his study, the thinking room, smelled of cedar and old cologne. A drawer in his desk bore a faded sticker, only for her. Ava Todd K knew it was for her. Inside, a thick envelope, sealed with wax, bore her name in Henry's handwriting. She sat, unfolding the letter. If you're reading this, my time ran out before I could give you what I meant to. Not just a home, but a future. The company shares, the Monterey house, the Arizona vineyard, they're yours. You are my legacy. Notarized documents followed, dated a month ago, naming Ava the beneficiary of the house, 40% of the Caldwell Veterans Fund, and the vineyard. Her hands trembled, not from grief, but from being seen, truly seen. For the first time, Ava stepped onto the patio. The envelope clutched to her chest. The rain had stopped, the sky gold behind the clouds. The waves were calm, the railing smooth under her palm. You didn't just give me a house, she whispered to the wind. You gave me my voice. 2 months later, the house was no longer a museum of loss. Ava peeled back its heaviness, painting the walls honey and clay, sanding banisters, fixing pipes with stubborn grit and YouTube tutorials. She mended Henry's blanket with blue thread, keeping it on the couch. The silence hummed now, not echoed. One morning, the doorbell rang. Barefoot, tea in hand, Ava opened it to find orange ranunculus in a mason jar. A note tucked beside them. Still watching the tide for you. Proud. Elsie set it beside a seashell she and Henry had found after a storm. That afternoon, she drove to the community center on the bluff. Funded quietly by the vineyard's sale. No plaque bore her name. But they'd asked her to speak. In a navy dress, hair tied back, Ava stepped to the podium. My grandfather said, you carry your name on your back. Walk steady. Sometimes family breaks you, but the legacy you build with grace, that's unbreakable. The applause was soft, real. Veterans nodded, their eyes meeting hers. At dusk, a knock came at the side gate. A girl, 17, with Ethan's eyes and a loose braid, stood there, backpack slung over one shoulder. Dad said you were the enemy, she said quietly, that you ruined everything, but he never looked at me when he said it. I wanted to see for myself. Ava paused, then lifted the mat, placing the spare key in the girl's hand. When you're ready, she said. The girl nodded, clutching it, and Ava turned back inside. That evening, on the balcony, the sun sank, casting golden ribbons across the sea. Ava mounted a small plaque to the gate. H. Caldwell. Air by honor. She sipped her tea, the salt air filling her lungs. She didn't need their approval, just space to breathe. To rebuild. To be. Sometimes. That was everything.